We also made it clear that we will bring down this NDP government at the first opportunity we can. We need to bring an end to the damage that is happening here in British Columbia, and there's only one way to do that. Let's get back to the polls and get a Conservative government elected here in British Columbia. When you look at what's going on in our schools, today I just saw an article about students in Surrey are not, some students in Surrey are not going to be able to take their courses in school. They're actually going to have to take their courses at home. And I fully support that if that's a choice, but you shouldn't be forced to do that. Our education system is supposed to be there for all of our children and not a selective process. And so we've got to make sure that we do significant investments in our education system. And that also means we've got to get rid of this ideology. We've got to get rid of society out of our schools. We've got to get back to supporting parents and parental rights to make sure that our kids are learning and being prepared for their future, not having our education focus on so many of these social issues. We've got to leave those things for the families to be able to look after for our children. We need to make sure our schools are safe. We've got to make sure that we have strong anti-bullying programs in our schools, but we want to make sure that our kids are prepared for the future, and focusing on academics is the only way to do that. That also means that we need to refocus on grades, having grades for our children when they're going through their school as opposed to what's happening. We need to make sure we've got provincial testing in place so that we can measure up and you know just how well your student is doing, your child is doing in our education system. That is what our education should be focused on doing, and as a Conservative government, we'll make sure we get back to that. And I know Mandeep's very passionate about making sure these things happen. When it comes to Surrey, when it comes to things that are going on here, particularly when it comes to healthcare, south of the Fraser has been treated very poorly for far too long. We don't have the facilities, we don't have the focus that needs to be here. We made a commitment during the election to have a new children's hospital right here in Surrey, and I can tell you something, we're not letting up on that commitment. It needs to happen in this facility. It's long since time that Surrey becomes the true hub that it needs to be for everything south of the Fraser, and that we make sure that we've got the healthcare system that's needed to meet our needs south of Fraser, in particular here in Surrey. Along with that, we're going to always make this commitment. We need some changes in our healthcare system. We've got way too much administration. It's like 11 times more administrators that are needed in the system. We've got to get people back working in the front lines. We've got to get back to the basics of serving people. When I was talking with one of the emergency room doctors here, and they're saying they can wait 18 hours in a major city like Surrey in the emergency room. That to me just speaks volumes of the failure of our system. We've got very good healthcare workers, but the system itself is too overburdened and failed. So we're going to make sure that we hire the healthcare professionals that are needed, but most importantly, we're going to get administration out of the way so that healthcare can be delivered properly here in Surrey. There's another big issue though there's two other big issues I really need to touch on, and that is there was a court case in Richmond just a few weeks ago. And it's a little complex, but what this court case basically has done is said that Indigenous title can exist under your private property. You might think that doesn't mean a lot, it's not a big deal, but that essentially is taking away your private property rights. Because you have your private property rights, you have the right to say, put up a fence, put up a sign saying no trespassing, to protect your property. It's an asset, it's a value for you, it grows over time. Right, it is something that lots of people invest in their homes, and it's retirement for them. With this court case, all of that has changed because Indigenous rights override private property rights. So no one knows what that means in terms of the value of your home. No one knows what that means in terms of your rights of your private property, because if Indigenous rights come first, how do you know what your value as your property is? How do you know whether if somebody wants to come and camp on your yard, can you say no? Because it could be an Indigenous right for them to be able to do that. And so this is something that has changed the game dramatically in British Columbia. And it's something that is also very disturbing because this NDP government, they actually, when they were in court, they did not argue to protect private property rights. They did not make the argument that private property rights should supersede Indigenous rights. And I fully support reconciliation, but I tell you something, this has gone too far. We need to be able to make sure that we have private property rights protected in this province, and that is something that is a core value in terms of what we are as a Conservative Party, is to make sure that we fight for that. We will bring forward whatever legislation we can to protect that in British Columbia, protect your private property rights. But most importantly, we're going to make sure that we work respectfully with First Nations, but we draw some lines, because this has gone too far in terms of it. We need to be able to look at where there's impact on those rights for Indigenous and how we address it. I signed 435 agreements with First Nations. I know how to work with them without creating these kinds of problems, but we don't need this friction. And here's what this does for us as an economy. Let's say somebody wants to build housing. You've got a housing project you want to build. We need new housing. We need more housing, certainly in Surrey, but in all of British Columbia. So you've got a piece of property. How do you know if you're going to be building that, what tomorrow looks like? You don't know whether that private property that you're building on is going to change hands or the rules are going to change. How, as an investor, do you have the confidence to put that money into a project? It's the same thing goes with a mine or with a natural gas project or with a small business. Somebody wants to build a warehouse and do property. You don't know what the underlying rules are anymore to private property and what your rights are in British Columbia. That's what has changed. It is a significant shift in terms of how we do things in British Columbia, and there needs to be clarity. Now, this NDP government has appealed it, and I'm happy they're appealing it, but they never made the argument to protect private property rights in the first place. They can't now go to this appeal court and make the argument to protect private property rights because they've already said that's not their argument. And to me, that's just wrong. So we need to make sure that we enshrine our private property rights and protect the people and protect their assets in the future here in British Columbia. Not to the exclusion of First Nations. We need to be able to make sure that we do reconciliation, what I call economic reconciliation, but it can't be by taking away the rights from one group to give to another. There has to be a path forward that we can do this together. And that's what we're going to struggle to make sure that we do as Conservatives. The last thing I just want to quickly touch on is another very important issue, because we've got these tariffs that are coming in, tariffs from China and these tariffs from the United States in particular, that are causing all kinds of problems. Whether it is our forest sector and shutting down, whether it is the film sector, whether it is anything you look at, we now, it's significantly unknown in terms of what our future can be here. Those costs are going to be significantly higher for people to do business. We need to be able to fight back. But here's the crazy thing. We produce natural gas here in British Columbia. We've got lots of it in the ground. We actually have tens of trillions of dollars of natural gas. And here's the rub. Because we've got nowhere to send it, we are selling it to the Americans at an 80% discount. Sometimes we're actually giving it to them for free. And I'm sorry, as Canadians, I love our neighbors south of the border, want to make sure we got good relationships with them, but I am not interested in giving them charity. We need that revenue here. We need to utilize that natural gas. We need to get the value for this product that we have. It is our heritage. It is our assets. And just a $1 difference in the price of gas would generate over $1 billion in revenue to the government. And the international prices are $7 or $8 higher than what they're selling for here in North America. We have enormous potential. And here's the other rub on this. Who's been fighting against this? For the last 15 years, we managed to get one major LNG project going in British Columbia to get our natural gas offshore. 15 years to get one project. The Americans started 3 years after us, and in that 12 years, in the past 12 years, they've got 16 LNG plants up and running. And we managed to get one. What's wrong with us? This is crazy. And meanwhile, we're selling them our natural gas at an 80% discount or even more. They're then liquefying it and selling it for international prices. How did this happen in British Columbia? Well, I'll tell you how. There are organizations in the United States, whether it's Tides USA, whether it's the Rockefeller Foundation, whether it's the War Foundation, they have been funding environmental groups in British Columbia to stop us from advancing our projects. And those same environmental groups have been funding and supporting the NDP. This needs to change. And I'm sorry for calling it out so bluntly, but this needs to change in British Columbia. This is our heritage. This to me is our future. We need to get our mines open, we need to get our gas offshore, we need to stop selling Canada's oil at a 20 to 30% discount to the Americans. We actually need to start thinking as Canadians. And if we do that, if we get our resources offshore, we focus on that, not only will it generate more revenue for us as a province to be able to improve healthcare, to take care of crime and the addiction problems that we have, but we're then in a position of strength to sit down with the Americans and say, we want to be your neighbors, we want to be good neighbors, we want to be good trading partners, but you've got to treat us fairly. And if you're not willing to treat us fairly, that's fine, because we've got other customers. We don't have to go cap in hand and beg for them to have an agreement with us. That is the only way to be able to get our deal done with the Americans, is to be able to come from a position of strength. And like I say, the NDP, they don't get it because they're being funded by these groups that are trying to stop our resources and us from realizing our resources. So today in our resource sector, the mining sector, quite frankly, has froze out. They're looking at that decision in Richmond, they're looking at what's going on, saying, I don't know if I can invest in British Columbia. Our forest sector is on the verge of collapse. It used to generate billions of dollars in revenue for the government. Today it loses money. It costs more for the Ministry of Forests than it's generating revenue. Our natural gas, like I say, we're selling it off. We have so much that we could be doing in this province. Getting our economy going, getting people to work, seeing those higher wages and dealing with the affordability issue. And I tell you, as the Conservatives, enough is enough. We can't wait to get rid of these NDP government and what they're doing. We need to get these changes. Not just so our kids can have better education and our seniors can have the health care that they need, but that we can get our economy going, we can create that opportunity and that legacy. Because that legacy to me is what's worth being in politics. It's why I'm asking you to continue supporting us in the Conservative Party. That is our future. I want our kids to be able to stay in this province. Half our kids are looking at leaving. I want them to be able to stay here. I want them to be able to look at how they can build a future right here in British Columbia. How they can buy a home, how they can raise a family, have grandkids, and know that the future will be there for them. There's only one way to do that, and that is we need to change the way we're approaching stuff. It takes 15 years to get a permit through a process for a mine in British Columbia. 15 years. You go to Sweden, it takes 2 years. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, we just do what they do. So this is the approach that we're going to take as a Conservative Party, and I can promise you this, we are not going to stop, we are going to keep pushing, we're going to keep holding this government account for all these failures they're doing, but we are also in the process of planning to make sure that when this government falls, that we can get in immediately, we can get started right away, we can make these changes so that we can get off on the right foot and build that future. Because I tell you something, I look at all of you, I look at everybody around this province, and I think that is what we have been asked to do by the people in this province, is to be able to build that future, to be able to build that hope. And we will not stop until we deliver that to the people of British Columbia. So once again, thank you all for coming out. It's been a great pleasure to be able to be here. Thank you for your ongoing support for Mandeep and for our whole team here in Surrey and throughout the whole lower mainland. We managed to do something that no other political party has been able to do in terms of a base that we've been able to build. We are going to continue to grow, we're going to continue to fight, because that is what is worthwhile doing. So once again, take out a membership, be involved with us, help, maybe make some donations if you can, but most importantly, make sure you stay out and stay involved with these guys and part of their team. Hopefully we'll get to an election maybe even as early as this fall, and we will send the NDP to the curb and make those changes for everyone. Thanks again.